Hey guys, this is Dave with Audio In. Now, almost a year ago, I reviewed the U2 Alpha 3, and at the time, even though I wasn't really a huge fan of the earbud style earphones, I was genuinely surprised at how much better the Alpha 3 sounded than I expected. So when the Moondrop U2 showed up, my first thought was, this time I'm not going to jump to conclusions because maybe this one will surprise me as well. So I approached this review like I do all my reviews. I spent several days running through all my test tracks, trying different sources, and just really genuinely trying to get a feel for what the U2 is all about. So as usual, we'll go over what's included in the box, quickly go over the specifications, and then I'll share my experience with the U2, and then I'll tell you what I think about its sound. We have a lot to talk about, so let's get started. Included in the box are the earbuds. Then they've also included 5 pairs of foam covers and then a soft carrying pouch. And it's priced at $35, and it uses a single 14.8 millimeter dynamic driver, which is housed in what I believe is just a metal shell. Its structure appears to be pretty solid, and while it does remind me a little bit of a paper clip, it doesn't feel fragile at all, and it's actually quite sturdy, and its construction does feel pretty robust in general. The cable, however, while not necessarily feeling or looking cheap, is about what you might expect for this price range. It is a non-detachable cable. It's terminated in a 3.5, and it does feel a little thin and plasticky to the touch, but it's otherwise pretty light and generally manageable. And it has held up fine for me with just general use. Now, as far as fit and comfort, I didn't really experience any pain necessarily, but I did have a little bit of an issue trying to achieve a proper angle, because that is pretty crucial to achieving the best sound possible with this style earphone. And it's probably just my ears, but whenever I felt like I would get the right angle, like I said, it didn't hurt, but it was a little uncomfortable. But then when I added the foam tips, it did help a little with the problem, but then they would start to shift positions in my ears and I would have to keep repositioning them. So that was a little bit of an issue for me. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the sound. So as I had mentioned in my opening, I did review the Alpha 3 a while back, and me being more of an IEM and full-size headphone enthusiast, and me having the fit and comfort issues with earbuds that I have because of my ear shape or whatever it is that's causing the issues, I don't think I ever really, at least initially, fully understood what the major draws were of the earbud style. So I made the Alpha 3 review, and as I typically do, I was kind of going through all the comments afterwards, and many of the comments were by earbud users, and several of them had mentioned that IEMs caused them to feel too isolated and cut off from the outside world. And then one other person had mentioned that earbuds allowed them to hear and be more aware of their surroundings when they were doing their daily subway commute. So it was literally, for them, it was like a matter of personal safety, which I 100% understand. And there were lots of other reasons as well. Some said they found earbuds to simply be more comfortable. So I guess my point is that I completely understand and respect that each individual has their own preferences and needs. And I love that there are companies that are trying to fill that need. And I do like that Moondrop is kind of trying to get back into the earbud game. And while this may not be my preferred style of earphone, I definitely feel like I have a better understanding of what some of the draws are of the earbud style earphone. Okay, with all that said, how does the U2 sound to me? Well, it's what I would call mid-centric or mid-focused. But one thing I noticed, like with most earbuds that I've tried, the sound can change drastically depending on how you wear them. So when I was just kind of letting the earbud hang on my ear, the bass was very rolled off, and most of that bass, the bass that I could hear, was just mid bass. And the focus was more on the mid-range. So it had a more vocal-centric signature, which was fine. My biggest issue was that without any kind of seal, there wasn't enough bass, and the bass that it did produce was just mid-bass again, and it was kind of muddy sounding. But then when I tried to position it so that it created a better seal, which I was able to do, it definitely increased the bass presence, but it was still very mid-bass focused, and it only seemed to muddy up the sound even further. So it just had a very mid-bass focused presentation, and there wasn't much in terms of sub-bass in either position. Now, there was some dynamics, there was punch in the mid-bass, so that did bring a little more excitement to its presentation, but it was hard for me to get past some of the other stuff that was going on. Again, like the bass bleed, and the bass bleed was to the point to where the mid bass was overpowering the vocals and the instruments significantly enough to affect vocal and instrument reproduction negatively in a couple of different ways. First, for me, it just made everything sound a little unnatural. The low mid-range had too much energy, and it made everything sound a little bloated and muddy, for lack of a better term. Secondly, instrument and vocal detail, texture, and just the overall mid-range clarity seemed to be lacking no matter how I positioned them in my ears or whether or not I had foam covers on them. So there are definitely some issues going on in the mids and the mid bass, but unfortunately the issues aren't confined to just the mids and the bass. I noticed similar issues in the treble as well. There was a little bit of detail coming through in the treble, but for me personally, it just wasn't enough. And I don't really know what to attribute that to, because in terms of just treble presence, or at least lower treble presence, it did seem to have pretty decent amounts of energy, because I could hear cymbals and even a little air in the upper treble, which was good, but it just wasn't giving me much in terms of overall resolution. Now, I should clarify that when I took the foam tips off, it did seem to help a little, but even then, I don't think the increase in detail was significant enough for me to feel like I was getting the amount of detail that I was wanting. Now, something else that a viewer had mentioned on the Alpha 3 review, a comment, was that earbuds can have a more open sound and also can produce really good layering. And I know that's true because I've heard several sets that did that well. The Alpha 3 actually did a pretty decent job at that. And I know that I think it's Riku Buds, apparently they make some pretty impressive sets as well. But I have to say, I'm not really getting that with the U2. It's actually even what I might consider to be more of an intimate presentation. And in terms of layering, there is some separation happening, but it's not quite as good as some of the other earbuds I've heard. Not that I've heard a lot. Again, my thing is IEMs and headphones, just to be clear. So throughout this process, I had to keep reminding myself that this is a $35 budget earbud. And just like any budget product, whether it's an earbud, IEM, or headphone, you can't always expect it to have excellent sound performance. And I also had to remind myself that the hole in the market that this is trying to fill, or the need it's trying to meet, is more related to cost effectiveness or being budget minded as opposed to offering great performance. So the goal is to provide a product that sounds good enough while still being affordable. And I think this is an affordable set. And while I can't say that it meets my standards, at least what my standard would be for a budget set, there might be those out there that this set will work for, but it's not something I would typically use. And you know what? I am going to keep looking and trying other earbuds, because who knows, I might eventually find a pair that could work for me. So that concludes my review. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch. If you like my content, please take a second and hit that subscribe button. Also, if you would please like this video, please share this video. I hope you guys have an awesome day.